Hi everyone, and welcome to the Shane Plays review of Tales from the Yawning Portal. There it is right there, the new D&D 5e book. Just dropped to Wizards Preferred Store Network stores yesterday on March 24th. It'll be out for regular retail channels on April 4th, like Amazon and all that stuff. So there you go. There it is right there. That's Durnan, the proprietor of the Yawning Portal in Waterdeep right there. This book isn't actually about the Yawning Portal. It is a anthology of 7 classic Dungeons and Dragons adventures, dungeon crawls really, that have been updated to 5th edition. So the previous book was Volo's Guide to Monsters, which also wasn't like a campaign book or anything like that. It was sort of a monster manual plus lore book on some of the more well-known D&D monster races. And then all the books before that have been like these big, campaign books, really. So this, again, after Volo's, now we have this as a bit of a departure. It didn't bother me. I like to have variety of content. And so we'll talk, about this. What do I think? And I'll tell you here in a second. But first, I want to remind you, or not remind you, but tell you, there's a companion blog post at my website of shaneplays.com. That's ShanePlays.com. And there's a companion blog post that kind of has some of the same information, but it also has a photo gallery of artwork from this book that you're not going to see on this video. So if you want to head over there and check out that photo gallery, feel free to do so. But, you don't have to do so to get an idea of whether I like the book or not. Now, so what's basically happening here, back in the day, we used to have these things called modules. And for a long time, this was what you got. These were, you usually didn't have these big mega campaign books or whatever. And this is from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So this is late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s maybe. And this is actually UK1 Beyond the Crystal Cave. It's just the only module of this type that I happen to have in my collection. And you would get sort of a cover that usually had a map or something on the inside of it. And a little bit of trivia, that blue that they did, evidently that blue ink they did was supposed to help prevent photocopying. That's from what I understand. And then you had the adventure book with the adventure in it, whether it's an overland adventure or a dungeon crawl or whatever. These days, if you want something like that, you've pretty much got to get it from like Drive-Thru RPG or the DM's Guild in a digital form, or some third-party companies or whatever are putting stuff like this out, for 5th edition or for their various games. But D&D itself, Wizards of the Coast, isn't really publishing this type of stuff anymore in hard copy or physical copy. You have to go to the DM's Guild, which is varying quality. Some of it's very good, some of it is because it's just different people publishing stuff there. But what this book is they took 7 classic adventures, ranging from 1978 to 2014, so it's 36 years. I think the earliest adventure represented here is Tomb of Horrors by Gary Gygax, which was written for tournament play, official, convention play, up to 2014, an adventure called Dead and Thay, which was written as part of the D&D Next playtest and encounters stuff that eventually D&D Next became D&D 5th edition. So that's kind of what's in here. I'll go over more specifically the actual individual adventures and stuff like that. But that's what's in this book. There's no technically new content, okay? It's existing content, adventures, dungeon crawls. Need to specify, these adventures are all pretty much dungeon crawls that have been updated to 5th edition. So, which I personally think is pretty cool, because I think it's cool to have these adventures in 5th edition format without me having to do all the conversion myself. And some of these adventures I've never played, or I've never run people through. And some of these adventures will run you through. Trust me, some of them will be quite deadly. But I think it's a cool thing they did. I hope they continue to publish the classic camp, or not the classic, but the campaign level stuff like, Out of the Abyss and Storm King's Thunder and all that. But I like this kind of content too. I think this is neat that they did this. One other plug real quick before I get into the review proper. I interviewed Mike Merles from D&D. He's the lead dude from D&D at Wizards of the Coast about Tales from the Yawning Portal, and that'll go out on my radio show on April 1st. Not a joke, even though it's April Fool's Day. I was very glad to interview him. Great conversation. We talked about the success of 5th edition and also Tales from the Yawning Portal. That'll go out on my live radio show in the Little Rock area April 1st, and then also go out on the podcast version, which will, Google Play, and iTunes and all that, and then I'll also post it on my YouTube channel, on my blog, and all that. So anyway, moving on. So the book says explore 7 deadly dungeons in this adventure supplement for the world's greatest role-playing game. So Tales from the Yawning Portal is here, and after reading through it and looking it over, I do think that players will be doing anything but yawning as they play through these deadly dungeon or classic adventures, and in some cases deadly dungeon crawls. And it's these have all been updated to 5th edition with all new artwork, and it is a cool anthology. So you'll probably have an idea of what my review summary is going to be. I've already said I like it and that it's cool. Here's some numbers. Tales from the Counted Numbers. Cover price is $49.95. A lot of people will get it from Amazon or whatever. That's fine. But make sure to support your friendly local game store if you can. I certainly do. And by supporting my local game store, I get it a couple of weeks ahead of time because it's not even officially out yet at the main retail channels. It's 248 pages, 7 adventures, think 2 appendices with 15 magic items and 39 creatures and NPCs. And that's something I want to touch on. I guess it makes sense and it's obvious in retrospect, but when I first picked up the book, I wasn't expecting appendices with new magic items and, new to 5th edition anyway, and new creatures and NPCs, again, new to 5th edition, because some of this stuff appeared in some of these adventures or previous editions of D&D, but have never officially appeared in 5th edition. So I thought that was a nice little surprise to get, like 39 creatures. That's nothing to sneeze at. Well, and some NPCs mixed in there as well. And the caption, 5th edition always puts funny captions in their books on the inside credit pages, or not caption, but the disclaimer. It says, "Do we really need a disclaimer to tell you that it's not our fault that your character died because you decided to climb down into a monster and trap-filled hole in the ground?" No, they really don't. I mean, it's, anyway. So the Yawning Portal portion of the book is just in the introduction. And the Yawning Portal, for those of you that don't know, has been in multiple versions of Dungeons and Dragons and part of the Forgotten Realms lore. And this stuff doesn't have to happen in the Forgotten Realms. I'll touch on that here in a moment. But, the default setting for 5th edition, and really D&D in general for quite a while now, has been the Forgotten Realms. But the Yawning Portal is in the city of Waterdeep. And in this inn, where a lot of adventurers hang out, there's literally a huge well in the middle of the main room that is the Yawning Portal. And you can go down that well and into one of the levels of Undermountain, which is one of the largest and most well-known dungeons of D&D. I mean, it's this huge, sprawling dungeon that has had adventures and resources and stuff like that in multiple editions of D&D. I think, I could be wrong, feel free to correct me, it won't hurt my feelings. I think starting with 2nd edition was when they released this huge Undermountain box set that, is this mega dungeon thing. Anyway, the proprietor is named Durnan, and he was one of the first, if not the first, adventurers to go into Undermountain and come out and survive. And the riches he brought out allowed him to build this inn and buy the property around the well, which is actually an old sunken wizard's tower. It's a lot of lore going all the way back for quite some time. It does seem they've updated a little Durnan a little bit, unless I'm misunderstanding. I went back and researched, and at one time he was portrayed as a white-haired retired adventurer of about 70 years age. Well, now he's portrayed much younger, and he's got these potions of longevity that keep. I think he's like 200 years old now. So maybe something happened fictionally or in the lore, or maybe they just did that for 5th edition. I don't know, but it's Durnan. It's the Yawning Portal. It's Waterdeep, and there's the big. You can hang out in the inn, and there's the big well, and you can pay a gold piece to be lowered down in, another gold piece to be raised up, and you can either do that for kicks if you're drunk and the crowd's cheering you on, or you can do it because you have an adventuring party and you want to go down there and try to explore Undermountain. So Durnan will be happy to take your gold. Either way, he'll fix you a pint of ale, or he'll send you down as well. Either way, he's happy to do that. And it's important to note that you never at any point in any of these adventures have to go to the Yawning Portal. Okay, they just threw it in there in the end. It's a nice title for the book, Tales from the Yawning Portal. All these adventurers sitting around talking about stuff they've done. It's a good place to get plot hooks, to meet interesting NPCs. They mentioned that there's characters and NPCs from across the D&D multiverse that show up here. There used to be this thing. I think it was a comic book and a series of short stories and novels called Callahan's Cross Time Saloon, if I remember right. And all these different people from different times and realities would hang out in this saloon, and that kind of reminds me of the Yawning Portal. That came to mind when I was reading up on the Yawning Portal. But anyway, you don't have to use the Yawning Portal, but you can if you want. Saying you all meet in an inn ... is one of the classic. Yeah, it's cliche, but it works, and it sets the imagination going and the adventurous spirit going. You all meet in an inn, and a mysterious stranger approaches you, and there's tables, random tables. RPG players love random tables in the introduction that you can roll for various interesting trinkets that are around the inn that Durnan has collected through various means, and there's also a random table for NPCs that you may encounter while you're in there. So if you want to use the Yawning Portal, go for it. You don't have to, but it's a great place to for adventurers to hang out and get plot hooks and be sent on these adventures that go to these various adventures that have been updated, dungeon crawls for 5th edition. So another thing I want to mention, if you take a 5th edition book and you make a big thing about it being in the Yawning Portal or around the Yawning Portal or having something to do with the Yawning Portal, and there's a big well that goes down to Undermountain, which is one of the main mega dungeons ever in D&D history, but yet there's no 5th edition version of Undermountain. It leads one to speculate that an upcoming official product from Wizards of the Coast might involve Undermountain. I'm just saying, I don't have any inside knowledge on that, but whether it's like an official, like maybe a mega campaign book, like Out of the Abyss or Storm King's Thunder, centering around the whole dungeon of Undermountain, or whether it's like a digital product, like in the DM's Guild or something, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't start seeing official Undermountain 5th edition products from Wizards of the Coast. This is just speculation on my part. Now, the adventures themselves, the 7 updated adventures, again, like I said, they range 36 years. From the 1978's Tomb of Horrors to 2014's Dead and Thay. Now, Dead and Thay could argue not to be a classic, right? But it is evidently, I've never played it. Evidently, it's a well-regarded adventure. It's kind of a deadly dungeon in the vein of like Tomb of Horrors or something like that. And I'll probably open your veins while it's at it. These things are deadly. And with minor exceptions, all of these 7 updated adventures are basically the same adventure but made 5e ready. Now, like when I talked with Mike Merles a couple of weeks ago, again, that show will be coming up soon, he did say they made minor changes here and there, but for the most part, it's the same adventure. And all new artwork does accompany each adventure. And nostalgia, for the previous artwork, and I have a lot of nostalgia for, classic Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing game artwork. But that aside, the artwork just looks really good. The interiors, the layout, the editing, fifth edition, a hallmark of fifth edition has been how good the books look and the artwork is and all of that. So continuing kudos to them. Now, the adventures themselves represent pretty much every level range. First of all, you got the Sunless Citadel, and that's a adventure from 2000 from third edition, written by Bruce Cordell, if I remember right, and that's basically for first level characters. It's a good introductory adventure / dungeon crawl for players and DMs. And then following that, you got the Forge of Fury, which is a third level adventure. Then you have the Hidden Shrine of, and I'm going to mess this up, Tamoachan. It actually started with a different name, but over time it's become known as the Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan. That's for 5th level players. White Plume Mountain, 8th level. Dead and Thay, 9th through 11th level. Against the Giants, which is actually 3 adventures combined into one. It started life as 3 Advanced Dungeons and Dragons modules related, and then over time just became one big adventure. And then the classic Tomb of Horrors, which is fondly remembered by many players, vilified by many players. It's a very difficult dungeon. You basically just test your metal against it, and it's just nasty. So now, and Gary Gygax wrote it purposefully as a challenging adventure. To challenge players against initially at conventions. But now, Tales from the Yawning Portal is not meant as a campaign. However, even in the introduction, they point out that each adventure represents a certain level range, and those level ranges all kind of tie together. So if you wanted, with just a little bit of work to tie them all together, you could, as a DM, you could run players, starting at first level through every adventure up through the Tomb of Horrors. So if you wanted to run it kind of as a campaign, a succession of dungeon crawls, you could do that. There wouldn't be an overall narrative unless you added one in there, but just for the fun of it, I mean, you could definitely do that. So starting with Sunless Citadel and wrapping with the Tomb of Horrors. So now, one thing I would have liked to have seen is kind of a quick reference chart, real super easy to reference on which party size and level and all that was associated with which adventure. But the introduction does have a paragraph summary of each adventure, and it mentions that in there. But I would have liked to have seen more of a just, let me see a chart. Minor quibble. The book's done well. There's also a good spread of dungeon types. If like Sunless Citadel, it's just your basic dungeon crawl. It's introduced people to how dungeon crawls work. There's several good, solid, classic type dungeon crawls in here. But then you also get into like White Plume Mountain has been described as an amusement park dungeon or as a funhouse dungeon because it doesn't really make a lot of logical sense. But it's a lot of interesting mental and in some cases combat challenges and puzzles and traps and that sort of thing. So some people have described it like as a fun house. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is fun. It's an interesting challenge. And then you've also got just straight up killer dungeons like Dead and Thay and Tomb of Horrors. So there's a good spread of dungeon crawl types in Tales from the Yawning Portal. But I want to mention again, these are all pretty much dungeon crawls. There's not a whole lot of narrative storytelling, epic type adventures in here. It's basically kick down the doors and let's do the dungeon, which is fine with me, but maybe not fine with everybody. So, and some of the dungeons like Tomb of Horrors and Dead and Thay, they're pretty deadly and they won't hold the player's hands. Now, I mentioned settings earlier. The default setting for all of the adventures, and for pretty much everything in 5th edition so far, has been the Forgotten Realms. However, there's notes with each adventure for how you can place it in various other well-known settings, including Dragonlance, one of my personal favorite settings. And this will make a lot of people happy. Eberron. There's a lot of people that want some Eberron 5th edition material official from Wizards of the Coast. Now, let me be clear. This isn't a whole lot of detail, this and that. It's just, some notes on, hey, if you want to put it in Eberron, here's how you could do that. Of course, the Forgotten Realms, which is the default setting, and then Greyhawk. So that's pretty neat. Pretty nice. Now, some other tidbits I want to mention. there's a guide to the front cover character art on the inside of the credits page, which was kind of a nice touch. You got all this character art here, and then when you open up this, I don't know how well you can see that. You've got this main cover here, and then there's a little guide here with an answer key that you can try to figure out who's who on this cover, and that's kind of neat. That's a nice touch. Each adventure features a sidebar, like I said, with information on the original module. Like, for example, and you can see an example of this on the blog page at shaneplays.com, the companion blog piece. But that right there shows you the original cover for the Tomb of Horrors. And it says Tomb of Horrors was born in Gary Gygax's home campaign and introduced to the world at the first Origins game convention in 1975. So this actually goes all the way back to 1975, but its original publication was in 1978. Since then, Tomb of Horrors has risen to legendary status among D&D players and is generally regarded as one of the greatest adventures of all time. In the words of its creator, this is a thinking person's adventure. It was designed not for player characters of a certain level, though high-level adventures are certainly necessary, but for players who enjoy a mental challenge and DMs who want to put their own spin on this truly unique dungeon. And in fact, the level recommendation for Tomb of Horrors, I'm not sure if I read it a while ago. It's on you can go to the blog post and see all these. Against the Giants is 11th level. Tomb of Horrors says only a high-level character stands a chance of coming back alive. There's not even a level recommendation. It says you better be high level if you even want just a little chance of coming back. So each adventure has those little sidebars, which is nice. And then two of D&D co-founder Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson created D&D. But anyway, two of his classic adventures made it in: Against the Giants, which was actually three adventures that became one, and then Tomb of Horrors. And then again, I just want to mention it was nice to get those stat blocks for those new, I think 15 new magic items and 39 new creatures or NPCs. Again, new to 5th edition, including the giant crayfish. Who doesn't love the giant crayfish? Come on now, clawing its way back to the spotlight. Don't call it a comeback. It's been here the whole time. All right. So finally, is Tales from the Yawning Portal worth your money? All right. As with most of my reviews, I don't like to just give an up or down, yes or no, because there's a wide spectrum of, like, this is what I want, or interest, or desires, or whatever among D&D players, role players in general, right? So I'll give sort of a spectrum of recommendations. Right? So if you love some or all of these old adventures and you want a 5th edition version without doing the conversion yourself, Tales from the Yawning Portal is absolutely for you. Absolutely. If you want some module, remember modules? Module non-campaign type adventures in book form, and you don't want a PDF or whatever from the DM's Guild or Drive-Thru RPG, then Tales from the Yawning Portal is for you. If you like a good old-fashioned kick down the doors and get to loot and dungeon crawl, Tales from the Yawning Portal is for you. If you want brand new content or an epic campaign-level adventure like the previous releases from D&D 5e, Tales from the Yawning Portal is not for you. So that's the best I can do there. I think it's a nice book, put together well. I'm excited to play some of these adventures. In fact, I'm running my own personal group through Out of the Abyss right now, which is kind of a two-part. It's split into two parts. We're about to come to the end of the part one, and I'm going to send my party through White Plume Mountain, as in between those two parts, and then we're going back into Out of the Abyss. So this is a really nice book for having in this huge campaign. I'd like to kind of take a break from the campaign, go do a side adventure, and then come back. This is also a great resource. Or if you I don't want to have a big campaign. I just want to do some dungeon crawling. Let's do some adventures. Totally fun too. So I think I can recommend the book on many levels. But if people want these massive, epic storytelling campaigns, or if they want, like I just want all new content. I'm not paying money for content that's been pre-published before, just not in 5e form, then you're not going to be happy with this book. But everybody else, I feel, will be happy. Thanks so much for watching the Shane Plays review of Tales from the Yawning Portal. from D&D 5th edition. Remember, you can go to the companion blog post at shaneplays.com, and that'll be linked in the video notes, or just go to shaneplays.com and you can see a photo gallery over there that has some artwork and stuff from the book. Yeah, but if you get a chance, look through the book. So there's some nice artwork, and it's laid out well, and there's some cool stuff in here. So thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear your comments on what you think of Wizards of the Coast doing this kind of product instead of like just a new campaign book or splat book or something like that. And I'd also like to hear, if you're interested in this, what's the first adventure you would like to play, and do you have fond memories of any of the adventures that are being updated to 5th edition in this resource or this book? So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you next time on Shane Plays.